So I started this channel about 6 years ago, um, really not to show it to the general public. And in fact, almost all of the videos that I made initially were marked private. The reason for that is my folks were getting up there in age. They lived in Florida at the time. We're up here in North Carolina. And they were always asking what I was doing out in the shop. And so I'd, tell them, I'd take them some still photos sometimes. And my dad, he had a pretty varied background. He started out in the Navy. He left the Navy and worked in the sawmill with for my granddad. His father-in-law did that for quite a few years, and then got a job with General Electric. Worked with General Electric for about 21 years, and then left there, went for the Department of Defense, Navy Nuclear. He worked there for 20 years and then finally retired. All during that time, he kind of piddled with woodworking, built a lot of stuff, built a lot of houses by himself. Well, I say by himself, it was him and him as my mom. And then he built small stuff. They built, when my son was born, built a crib. Still have it to this day, and that's been 34 years ago. When I first started in practice, I needed a table to put an X-ray view box on, and I was telling him about it, and I was telling him some of the prices that things were going for, and he didn't say anything. He said, "Well, yeah, it sounds expensive. I guess anything that is going to go into a clinic is going to be expensive." And about 2 weeks later, they called and they said, "Hey, we're going to come up this weekend. Don't make any plans." So didn't make any plans, and they showed up, and I noticed they were driving their truck. Didn't get the best gas mileage, but I didn't think anything about it until they brought their bags into the house, and he said, "I need your help getting something out of the back of the truck." And he took a packing blanket off the top, and it was just a beautiful custom-made table that I could set an old X-ray view box on. So he was always making stuff like that. As he got older, the projects just kept going, and I didn't really, it's not that I didn't have interest in woodworking or things of that nature. It was just time. I was new in practice, just trying to make a living, trying to raise a family, as it were. And so pan forward a few years, my wife and I had the opportunity to buy what we considered was a decent sized farm. And so I, did a lot of the remodel inside of that, obviously with my dad's help and my father-in-law's help. He was a big help. So after we got everything in, got it settled in, the house that we had before, I had a little 10 by 12 outbuilding that I somewhat converted into a shop, mostly hand tools, mostly just piddling, taking tree limbs and making them into just different stuff. Did a little carving and, just turning stuff, or not turning stuff, but whittling it by hand, really. And when we got this place, I really enjoyed doing that. It kind of took my mind off what was going on at work and, the stresses of the day. And so we were in a position where we thought, we can invest a little bit. So my wife said, "Why don't we invest in you?" So I bought a 10 by 20 outbuilding, one of those prefab ones. I should have built it, but at the time I just wanted it quick. So got a 10 by 20 outbuilding. I bought a rigid table saw, bought a Harbor Freight, which I guess was Chicago tool, miter saw, compound miter saw, and started going to auctions and buying little hand tools here and there, which became an obsession pretty quickly. And I was constantly telling my dad, and my mom too. She was actually really into that stuff too, what I was doing. And one day my dad just kind of casually mentioned it. He said, "Why don't you take a video of it and send it to me?" So what I quickly learned, I'm not the best at technology, was that the videos that I was taking were a little bit too long to send, obviously by phone, and definitely by email. It was just too big. And been watching YouTube for a while and didn't know much about it. And my son, I was talking to him, and he was well into it. He was into that and into Instagram and all that stuff. And he had his own side hustle where he made what do you call it, techno music, and was was selling that on different platforms. So he helped me set up a channel. It was called Carolina Country Farm, still is, and started putting some videos together, low quality, not very entertaining. I got a few hits here and there. Wasn't anything big. I had two that really took off. One was how to get honey without an extractor. I think that one's well over 600,000 views, I think now. The other one, we farm on a small scale, and I'd bought a couple younger bulls and had them castrated and did a video about that, and got mixed reactions. Some folks were, are accustomed to farms and things like that. They, gave us some pretty good comments, and we'll call them the other folks. I took a lot of heat, but it is what it is. Everybody has a right for their opinion, and in social media, everybody's going to share their opinion, whether you like it or not. But kind of let that go. So pan forward a little bit, my folks were getting a little up there in years, so we were talking about, they'd been retired for a while and they were traveling a lot, and they were talking about stopping the traveling a little bit and settling down, as it were, for retired folks. And my mom's health wasn't the best. We wanted to keep them close, and so the property that we bought had a small cottage on it that was the original house on the property. And it just sat empty. I mean, it was already updated, central heat and air, had power, everything that you need to live. And they came up for a visit right after we bought the place. I mean, literally, I think it was like a month after we closed and started to move in. And we were at dinner, and my wife was sitting across from my mom, and I was sitting across from my dad. And my wife never said a word to me, never looked at me, never asked, what I thought. She just said, "Why don't you guys move into the cottage?" And my mom never looked at my dad, never looked at me. She said, "Okay." So I was happy to hear it. I think it took my dad by surprise a little bit. He was never a fan of the cold weather. But they went back down to Florida. Literally 2 weeks later, their house was sold. They had, bought a house in an older subdivision that needed some work, and that they loved to do that. They fixed it up and everything and sold it in less than 2 weeks. So they started packing, and they called. Well, they didn't tell us, that it had sold. It was a cash deal, so it was a quick close. I mean, it was not a 30-day deal. I mean, it was in under 2 weeks they had closed on the property. So long story short, my wife and I flew down. They picked us up, went to the house. They already had everything packed and everything in a moving truck. They had their pickup loaded to the gills. They had their camper loaded to the gills. And so we got off the plane, got to their house. We put, I think, maybe 3 or 4 boxes in the moving van, and everybody jumped in a vehicle, and we started heading towards the Carolinas. So got up here, got everything settled in. And that's really when you stop seeing some of the videos that I had done, because there wasn't a need. My dad was here, and so he would come down to the shop and work with me and gave me a lot of pointers. A lot of them I really appreciate, because if you notice, I have 10 fingers still. A lot of things in a wood shop can be a hazard if you're not paying attention, if you don't know what you're doing. He definitely gave me some tips and tricks that not only saved my digits, but made some of the woodwork I did a little bit easier. Where I'm sitting right now, this is the addition to the workshop. Actually, myself and a buddy of mine built this. All the cedar that you see on the walls, there was another buddy that had taken down a bunch of cedars. I'd taken them to a sawmill, had them cut them, and then I ran every one of them through a rigid planer, 13-inch like lunchbox style planer. Cut them down on that rigid table saw, ran them through and squared them up on the Chicago, what do you call it? Chicago tool, Harbor Freight miter saw, and used a Harbor Freight brad nailer to stick it to the wall, the lower part of the wall down right there. That is all pallet wood. But did that as another 10 by 20 addition. So I now have a 20 by 20 workshop. It's kind of bittersweet. My dad had passed away several years before I did this. My mom had passed away in 2016 and my dad passed away in 2017. So this was really the shop itself. Initially, like I said, I just really wanted to fidget with stuff, and I wanted, my dad had really encouraged me to do it, so I wanted him to see his stuff. So some of the videos that you've seen on there were really more for him. And at one point he said, he goes, you ought to let everybody see these. And like the one I did I did a review for a HQ wood stove from Sportsman's Guide. I sent it to him just to show him, and he said, why don't you redo it to where, other people can see it, maybe they would enjoy it. Because I guess I kind of got him hooked on YouTube also. So did that. I did one where I built a smokehouse, and that one was one of the early ones. Everything I had done, I used a Granberg chainsaw mill to do that. So I know this may be boring to some, but I just kind of wanted to explain to folks, really why I'd started the one channel, and why, after a while the videos just kind of petered out. Just like I said, my folks were up here at that time. They moved up here in latter part of 2015. My mom passed away July of 16, and then my dad passed away about a year after that. So he didn't really get to see a lot of what I had done here, but I'd like to think that he's looking down, and there's been a couple times that I've had that little voice in my head and kind of pulled my fingers away from something at the nick of time. And I think both of them had something to do with it. So my plan is to kind of start doing some videos again, just for fun. I've actually retired from practice, but I started actually two other companies, one medical related, one non-medical related. But this has always been not always, but this is over the last few years has been a good release for me. And I think there's other people out there that might enjoy watching what I make or ridiculing what I make, whatever you want to say. I get a mixed bag, and the comments, honestly, I don't really read them, just because there's, like I said, there's some folks on there. I know a lot of people call them keyboard warriors, that don't have anything better to do, and I don't want to engage. I guess let them get frustrated because I don't answer. But most of what I do is woodwork. I actually bought a small bus and pretty much done with the conversion of that. I didn't show anything on that just because there's so many of them out there. But something when I first retired, I didn't work for about 3 months, and it was something to occupy my time, and my wife said I was driving her nuts, so I decided to do that. But I may show some video on that. I don't know. We'll see. But if you like the idea of folks making things, I don't have a CNC. I had nothing against CNCs. I just don't have one. I've got a 1959 Craftsman lathe, which I found out quickly that thing wants to kill you. I learned some lathe safety techniques pretty quickly, or turning safety techniques, whichever you want to call it. But so anyways, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. I don't have that many followers. I think I'm like 2,600, something like that. But I'll post some more content. I may do some stuff around the farm. I've been beekeeping now for the last 5 years. Actually started that with my dad, which was an experience. Quick story on that. I'd ordered some bees from a place that's no longer in business. It was Brushy Mountain Bee Supply, and they had an apiary up there. And I had a hive for about a month, and he wanted to get one, so he found one on Craigslist. What we did not realize is the ones that he bought on Craigslist were Russian bees. Russian bees are jerks. They tend to be a little more aggressive. I found out the hard way. Dad was smart enough to stand back a little bit, and I thought, well, they're going to be like the Italian bees that I've got. They're going to be docile, and yeah, no. Got the daylight stung out of me. I deserved it. I was messing with them when I shouldn't have been, So I may put a little bit of that. Got some, like I said, some chickens, some cattle, just small stuff. But if you like this, like I said, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, don't give it a thumbs up. We'll see what we can do. So thanks everybody for listening. Hope it didn't get too sappy on you, but just wanted to let you know where the channel came from. I also have another channel that I'm moving most of the woodworking stuff to. It's called Noisy Rooster Builds. That name actually came from my dad. We were doing something on video one day. I think we were cutting boards with the chainsaw mill, and I had a rooster at that time that was just, letting us have it. And he said, "Boy, that's a noisy rooster." And he just kind of looked and he said, "That's what you ought to name the channel, Noisy Rooster Build." So I already had Carolina Country Farm. I'm probably going to keep it, but most of the build stuff you'll see will be on Noisy Rooster Builds. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for listening. Didn't think it would go this long, but have a good evening.